At Neotel, we continue to challenge the status quo and make communications simpler for our customers.
And welcome back to Business This Week. Now, over the past few weeks, we've seen how social media insights help one better understand the sentiment towards companies and various industries. Today, we're looking at the airline industry, and it's an industry that I am very sure is used to its fair share of complaints from cranky travelers, waiting in queues, missing flights, and the bugbear, losing luggage. Melanie Malherbe is the head of client engagement at BrandsEye, and she joined us now for a social media analysis and insider research, and we're talking the airline industry. What are the key themes that have come out of the conversation this week?
So as you said, the airline industry obviously gets its fair share of service-related queries, but we've looked at the past month and a half just to see what the sentiment is towards the airlines in SA specifically, and it actually paints quite an interesting picture. If you look at it, we picked up on one specific company that actually had quite a bad month with a marketing effort that was supposed to drum up positive sentiment, and it actually went quite wrong for them. So as I said, we looked at the data from the 7th of June up until now, and looked at FlySafe Air, SAA, Mango, and Kulula. And as you can see there was a lot of conversation, actually quite positive, around SAA and Mango.
Right.
And that was driven by both SAA and Mango actually having their first flights using biofuel.
Oh, yes, I saw that. Tobacco...
Nicotine-free tobacco,
yes.
I think Project Solaris it's called.
Yeah.
So they had their first flights using that. And then the other positive driver behind the SAA was them being announced as Africa's best airline.
Is this the Skytrax Awards, I think, which is almost like the Oscars of the aviation industry?
Exactly that, yes. So that drummed up quite a lot of positive conversation for those two brands. Kulula was sitting there with a bit of negative sentiment still, and that was just related to, as we said earlier, the normal, negative baggage, flights delayed, those types of conversations. The one that stands out there is definitely FlySafe Air this month. They had a lot of volume and mostly negative. Yes, and that was related to, like I said, the marketing effort they had, where they had 15,000 tickets that they sold for R2.
I missed that completely.
No, I kind of
R2 sales.
So
this is the spike that's actually showing us that R2 sales.
Yes,
wow.
On the day they had 11,000 mentions specifically related to that sale. As you can see, the blue line at the bottom, that's the positive sentiment, and that's obviously related to people getting their flights and being excited about this.
Yeah.
But the service crashed. And that drove a lot of negative sentiment, and a lot of people were really unhappy about it.
Isn't that almost expected, though? It's almost like when they, back in the day, I don't know if they still do it, where they have the red hanger sale at Edgar's or something, and everything is like at, I don't know, 5%. Yeah. At some point, it's not going to be a system crash, but it's just not sustainable.
People not being able to handle what they actually put out there, and it has happened to a few brands on at least the digital side of things. The thing that was interesting, actually, is that if you look at the sentiment now and how it's moved from then to now, it unfortunately for them hasn't been a good story. So you can see that actually started off as a really positive brand.
Right.
And then the sentiment on the day dropped to negative 19%. And it hasn't recovered just as of yet. It has recovered to the point of being positive again. But it kind of leads you to believe that if someone has had a bad experience with a company one time, how long does it take them to recover from that bad experience? And as you can see,
so
it's taking a
in
while.
fact, what we're seeing here, that the investment that they probably made as a company actually hasn't brought in, greater visibility, because they've just flatlined overall.
Exactly, yeah. They've not recovered at all, and it's not as positive an impact as I think they would have wanted.
It's also interesting that SAA was also positive, because this week there's a lot of talk around that dodgy contract, allegedly dodgy contract with BNP, and it's interesting how consumers will look at their personal experience rather than sort of the bigger stories.
Yeah.
So that's interesting in terms of the aviation sector.
Yes.
But we also look at the trend tracker. So what is the trend of the week that has come up this week? This is the question we put into Melanie now. And what's trending this week?
So we had a look at the retail industry, and specifically two supermarkets who launched two marketing initiatives, the one being Pick and Pay with their Super Animals campaign,
yeah,
and the one being Checkers, the other one being Checkers with their Little Shop campaign. And it was mostly aimed at kids and getting toys and getting them excited. I think the nag factor, where kids want their parents to go and buy at a certain place to get these toys. So the Pick and Pay, we're looking at the first 5 days of conversation here. Pick and Pay definitely drumming up a lot more conversation than Checkers Little Shop. And also, 60% of that conversation is actually positive. If you look at Checkers Little Shop, only 30% of it is positive conversation, but neither of them had negative conversation. So it's either a neutral conversation or a positive conversation. If you look at the bottom line there being Pick and Pay stickies, which was the first of its kind of this type of campaign, very little conversation in the first 5 days, but as we all know, that kind of exploded into a massive campaign.
So Pick and Pay obviously has learned some interesting lessons from the Stickies campaign, and they've gone and they've implemented that with their Super Animals, and you can see that just by looking at the density of the conversation.
Exactly. They also have the cards that are handed out in shop and an application for the kids to play around with. The interesting thing about the Checkers one is that it was aimed at kids and children, but the adult consumer actually found a lot of appeal to the little...
I'm sorry, I don't understand this. When I saw this, I completely just, my mind didn't register, because what I saw was this little sunlight dishwashing liquid and a little Omo and a little peanut butter.
What it is.
And it's just a collection of these little items.
That is all it is. You spend more than 150 Rand at Checkers and you get your little mini store item. I've got a little Simba chips packet at home.
And if you open it, is the actual Simba chips on the inside?
No,
oh, okay,
no,
it's just
a little miniature.
Let's throw forward to the big event on next week, of course. And this is, of course, it's going to be all focused on the local elections. How do you begin to then position the tracker so that you're able to track sentiments for that conversation?
So we obviously look at the conversation aimed at the parties themselves and just kind of go, when people say this party, what do they feel? So this week we looked at the shift from last week that we spoke about.
Yeah.
So what you can see there is the EFF actually had a massive drop in net positive sentiment. And that was mostly related to Julius Malema supporting the movement against Mugabe.
Credibility issues, right?
Yeah, and it wasn't because he's supporting, you know, the move against him. It was mostly because of credibility. People saying, "But you were with him, and now you're changing your mind. And how are we supposed to support you? In which way are we supposed to support you now?" The DA didn't show much negative conversation this week. There wasn't actually a big event that actually drove their conversation. It just, I think, normalized from what it was last week with the whole using Nelson Mandela in the advertisement thing. And then
that's died down a little bit.
It's definitely died down. On the ANC side, it's still very much negative. The usual suspects, SABC, corruption case. But the one that also popped up this week was the Marius Fransman possibly being brought back into his position, and people being quite unhappy about that.
And of course, I think it was Monday was International Mandela Day, and my interest has always been whether we've been able to sustain that day as truly an international day versus just it being a South African recognized day.
Yeah, so there were about 30,000 tweets around the Mandela Day projects, and it was mostly around celebrities saying, and that's actually a Colombian person tweeting that there. Obviously, your celebrities like DJ Fresh showing what they did for the day, and then your big corporations, how they supported the day. And then also, unfortunately, a lot of conversation around Gugu Zulu and his passing.
Gugu Zulu, of course, being a big talking point. And of course, I was about to say that Michelle versus Melania. That's another conversation that had everybody tweeting this week.
Yeah, many memes coming out, many jokes coming out. Maybe we should have a look at that next week.
Absolutely. I think we should have a look at Melania versus Michelle, or the other way around. And a big thank you to Melanie Malherbe. She is the head of client engagement at BrandsEye, joining us and walking us through a very interesting conversation from aviation all to the local government elections coming up. When we come back, we're going to be looking at not the cost of South Africa's Rio Olympic hopes, but rather we're going to be also hosting an Italian delegation that's here in South Africa, and they are looking for investment opportunities in the cooperative space, and they're going to be telling us whether they found those opportunities or not. We'll see you in a short while.